My name's Brendan DeSetti. If you'll notice in your programs, it's supposed to be Christopher Dyer, but I'm filling in for Chris. I'm Brendan DeSetti with the Software and Information Industry Association out of Washington, D.C. I'm the Education Policy and Programs Manager. They're doing, obviously, ed policy summary and analysis of state, federal, and national programs coming out of local and state governments and their impact on the education technology market. SIIA, our education division, represents the ed tech industry through policy and advocacy work, business development work, visibility, and a lot of intellectual property and anti-piracy advocacy as well, and legal support. We do several initiatives to support the market. We co-sponsor with the National Science Foundation the Incubator Pavilion that you'll see down on the exhibit floor, which is a group of startup education technology companies who are looking to gain exposure in markets like this. So we sponsor that, and we also put on competitions like the Innovation Incubator Program, which companies compete to be most innovative, most likely to succeed. And a host of those, we do several of those every year. And then we also do our big awards program, which is the SIIA Cody Awards, which is a highly coveted award through the education technology industry. I brought with me today, because you might notice, or you won't notice from my title, I have never started an education technology company, and I know you want information from folks who have. So I brought with me two representatives who are members of ours who are startup founders. I have SBIR Raja, who is the co-founder and CEO of Nepris, who is presenting down in the Incubator Pavilion. So if you want to stop by there and see her, as well as Adam Hall, the founder and CEO of Nirvonics. And I'm going to give a very quick overview of some market information, and then I'm going to turn to them. They can talk a little bit shortly about their company, and then we'll ask them questions, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience after our esteemed colleague from the National Science Foundation gives you some information on his organization as well. So one thing that we do in researching the market for K-20 education is the Vision K-20 survey, which is an annual self-assessment of educators and administrators from kindergarten through post-secondary education. They answer questions about what is the digital education technology integration in their classrooms, and what is their preferred, what's the level that they want to get to. So it gives a good insight into what's happening in the market and where the market wants to go in education technology, and we do that annually. Our 2014 survey is coming out, and we're about to open our 2015 survey. So if you are an educator, please go and take this survey. Our other one that's more of interest to the industry is our U.S. Education Technology Market Survey, which is a self-assessment of education technology companies and what are their sales and what types of products are they selling to the market. So this is some information from our 2014 survey, which has not come out yet. Our report on the survey, it's releasing this week or next week. I can't remember the exact date. So this is hot off the press. You're the first ones to see this. So we break it down to three different broad categories of products: instructional support, content, and platforms administration. So you can see that content by hair is the largest market for education technology right now, followed very closely by instructional supports and a little bit of platforms and administration. It's an $8.38 billion market for digital resources. It's up from 2012. It's rising. It rises every year, but 5.1% from the previous year. And then there's some statistics as well that you can see. Enterprise management systems up 40%. And while instructional support is down, I think it was at 40% last year. So you can see that it's down slightly from that year, but there's been a rise in testing and assessment, 16% from that year. And while content revenue is down, again, that one was probably 41% last year. Online courses, the market for online courses has risen dramatically. 321% is just one there. And testing and assessment, as you can imagine in today's education market, is the single largest category for education digital purchases at $2.5 billion. The last report I'll talk about here is one that we just started this year. It's our first report. It's called Behind the Data. So we want to dive deeper into what do these numbers mean. $2.5 billion in testing and assessment. That's a great number. What's really happening there? What is the market behind testing and assessment? So we're diving into Behind the Data. This one came out in 2014 on testing and assessment to look at what are the trends in that area. So you can see this is just the only slide I'll bring out on this one. The market for testing assessment over the past 3 years has grown 57%, and it's been growing hand over fist for quite some time. So these reports are available from SIIA. You can find them at SIIA.net. For members of our organization, these reports would be free. For the EdTech Market Survey, it's if you take the survey, even if you're not a member, you'll receive that survey for free, so you can actually see what the market is. So we're opening that survey up for the 2015 year, I believe next week. So if you take that, looking at what are your sales in your market, you can receive that report for free, and that's extremely valuable information for folks who are entering the market. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our EdTech entrepreneurs here. So just briefly, if you'll just introduce yourself and your company, and then we'll jump into a couple questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Hall. I'm the CEO of Nirvonics. This is, can you hear me? No? Push. No? Okay, yeah. CEO of Nirvonics. This is my my second go-around at a EdTech startup, so I'm truly a glutton for punishment. And we're about a year old, and I look forward to discussing with you.
What does Nirvonics do?
I got thrown off by the whole button here. We're a neuroscience company. We measure the engagement of learners using a little EEG device, a little headset, and then use that data to inform instruction about the attention level of the learner, so the instruction can adapt in real time to the engagement of the learner. So the idea is to make learning more efficient and effective. Primary focus right now is special education in K-12, with the understanding that mainstream education isn't quite ready for such applications of brain science, but I'm confident that they will be. And we also offer our products outside of K-12, primarily to companies who want to train their employees more quickly and efficiently. So we help them optimize their training content by making it optimally engaging.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shabri Raja. I'm co-founder and CEO of Nepris. So Nepris is a web-based platform that helps connect industry professionals with teachers and brings them live into the classroom. Why is this important? Because 47% of kids drop out because they don't see the relevance of school. And getting help from industry to bring that relevance into the classroom is so important, but it's very difficult for a teacher to find the right industry professional and to connect them into the classroom. It's a very time-consuming task, and that's the pain point that Nepris solves, is that we are a platform that helps teachers and professionals connect in order to engage the students with real-world connections. Great.
So I guess you addressed it a little bit. Why are you going into the EdTech marketplace? You see the need in there and you want to study it. So I'm going to jump to the next question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So what are some unique opportunities and challenges that exist in this market, education technology, versus a traditional consumer tech market?
So I know there is a lot of discussion around student privacy, and no matter what technology you work with, you have to face that at some point. For example, we connect professionals from the outside world into the classroom, and they are interacting and engaging with students. So it's always, the question is, how do we protect the students' privacy? So we do have to take a lot of steps to make that happen. But I wanted to actually talk about something else, which is so key to starting a company and being successful in the EdTech market, which is, if you look at the teachers in K-12, they have a lot going on, right? So the difference between building a consumer company or consumer technology for the consumer market and building something for the classroom is we have to take into account the time saver for the teacher. As engineers, sometimes we are notorious for saying that, hey, this is only going to take you 10 minutes. But that's 10 minutes that the teacher does not have because they have so much going on. So if you're thinking about starting a company, one of the challenges to overcome is how do you make it really, really simple for the teachers? Because this group is a lot different from a consumer market group.
I'd say one of the biggest opportunities in EdTech is the fact that your customers, if you're a K-12 focused company, your customers are schools and districts that really all have the same problems. So if you're solving problems for one district, you can rest assured that you're probably going to be able to solve problems for all the other districts, or most of them at least. So that's one. Also, districts and educators tend to really communicate with each other and talk about what's working and what's not. So referrals, if you can get a stronghold in one district and start getting them to advocate and cheerlead for you, it's fairly easy to do kind of a hub and spoke type model where you can start to grow from there. Challenges, I think, well, funding is always a challenge. Although schools and districts are pretty well heeled for the most part financially, trying to navigate the funding and loosen the funding sometimes can be a challenge. I had one other thought and it just went away. But I think funding is challenging, and then also, things need to be research-based. So one of the first questions you'll always get from an educator or from a district is, are you research-based? So that's very important. It can be very expensive and challenging to find, to develop the kind of research that you need, but it is fairly critical.
Great. And Glenn, when he gets up here, he'll tell you how you can find some resources to do that research. So what are some challenges you have faced in creating your company, but what have you done and to overcome some of those challenges? What have been the best parts of overcoming those?
Well, where do I start, right? Because there are plenty of challenges, especially if you're going after the EdTech market. One of our biggest challenges, and I think this is true no matter which market you're in, but it's even harder in an EdTech space, is what is your business model, right? And when you talk to different groups of users, you get different responses. So you always hear that, everything has to be free. And then on the other side, you hear that, well, if it's free, then it's perceived as not valuable. So you do hear these two schools of thoughts, and you often hear people saying just listen to your customers. But in this case, when you listen to your customers, it is a very confusing set of feedback you get. So you have to make the right decision for what business model is going to work for you. Right away, are you going to be a freemium model where your goal is to actually build the user base, or are you going to be a combination of a freemium plus a subscription or a premium model where you want to actually generate some revenue to sustain yourself? And this is going to be very different for each company. And this was one of our biggest challenges. We didn't want price to be a barrier. We wanted teachers to use our platform. But at the same time, we didn't want to constantly be in a fundraising mode. We wanted to generate revenue fast enough so we can sustain ourselves and continue to provide the service that we do. So I don't know if we've completely overcome this. If I did, I would be one of the few in the whole world to actually have a holy grail to business modeling. But one of the things we did early on is, when we started, we had this idea that, okay, this is going to be something that's going to be used by middle school and high school. Well, within K-12, middle school and high school is a target market, but what you quickly realize is you have to drill down even further. Within this market, who is your key audience? So very quickly we realized that career and technical education teachers are our key audience. So then who becomes your key decision maker? The CTE director within the school district. Once we realized who our key audience is and who is the key decision maker within that key audience and where the funding is coming from for these this group of people, it just all of a sudden it became easier to have conversations about pricing and funding with school district. Then the windows sort of open up. So really, I would encourage you to really work on whatever your product is, who within this K-12 system is your key audience, and really do your research and find that core group, because they have the biggest pain point, and if they see the value of the product, then they're going to find the funding for it, right?
Yeah, and I'll just expand on that. Very rarely will the person making the decision to buy your product be the same person using your product, and very rarely will either of those people be the one cutting the PO and writing the check. So you have to really navigate the players and make sure that everyone is in the loop. Not only when you're selling the product or the service up front, but if you're a subscription model or a renewal-based model, getting that repeat business is critical. For instance, you may have your teachers using your product in the classroom and doing very well with it. But if purchasing and if the administration isn't on board and it's not making its way into the next year's budget, you're in trouble. Vice versa, if your cheerleader is at the district level, the superintendent, let's say, and buys your product, but it's supposed to be used in the classroom and the teachers never touch it, then you're in a similar situation. So it's very critical to kind of make sure that your implementation is such that you are keeping different folks in the loop the right way. It's a challenge.
What's one piece of advice that you would offer to those thinking about creating an ed tech startup company or just a product within a company?
So one of the things, I speak to a lot of MBA classrooms, and I think I can say this confidently because I have an MBA, and especially if you have an MBA, you have this problem. You think that, okay, I have a great idea, and I have a beautiful business plan. I'm going to go raise money, and then I'm going to build the product and live happily ever after, right? But the reality is, you're going to be wasting a lot of time if you go after funding first, right? So you have to be able to, okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? So you have to be able to, find the product market fit. And we really worked on a lean development model. So 1 month after we started the company, we actually had our first classroom connect with the first company. And we did a session. Behind the scenes, we were all holding hands, and we made it happen. But in the process, we actually learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. And for the first 6 months, we were literally working with 5 schools, working with 4 companies, and really communicating closely with customers and building the product. We did not start a round of fundraising until we had a fully functional product and had customer traction. Once we started the fundraising process, it was very easy to convince the value that, yes, we found a product market fit, and there are users that have given us great feedback. So my only piece of advice would be focus on the right things, and the right thing is to find the product market fit, not to go after funding to begin with. You'll be wasting a lot of time.
I completely agree with that. Also, and this is based upon my experience, having a good attorney is very important. Having a good CPA is very important. It's worth every penny to get very competent and knowledgeable representation, both legally and from an accounting perspective. The other thing, just emotionally, and I can only speak from experience, be relentless if you're starting a company. You're going to go through stages of self-doubt. You're going to go through stages of extreme self-confidence and elation, and the emotional roller coaster can be intense. And there are days now when I go to bed at night and think to myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I crazy? And you have these conversations with yourself. Be the kind of person that looks to remove roadblocks, remove obstacles, not just identify them. And when you hire people, at least when I hire people, I always look for that one quality of is this person the kind of person who's just going to tell me what the problem is, or is this the kind of person who's going to not only identify the problem, but then give me ideas of how to solve it? because especially as a startup business, you're going to run into those problems, and you're going to need to have that kind of that gene, right, that helps you solve them, not just identify them.
And I'm going to hand it over to Glenn here in a second, but he wants to answer this question as well.
Something else that you should consider before you do anything is to make sure you have a customer or a bunch of customers who care about the product you're developing. It's a waste of your time, it's a waste of company resources to try to develop something first and then go try to find a market. Go out and talk to 100 people. In fact, that's what we use as a figure at the Science Foundation. You should be interfacing with about 100 potential customers. Figure out what pain points you're solving for them, what it is you're going to offer, and who is willing to buy and pay for it if you're going to run a sustainable business. If you can't find somebody who's willing to pay for the product or service you're providing and provide the funds to handle that, you're probably spinning your wheels and you'll never get that company off the ground. Find your customer first, identify it before you commit valuable resources and time to that effort.
Great. So I put this contact information up here, but Glenn's going to talk to you a little bit about opportunities with the National Science Foundation for resources, and then we will have an opportunity to ask, you can ask questions to our experts and to Glenn, because I know that you're brimming with more questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you. At the National Science Foundation, what we do is we provide opportunities for small business to get federal grant money to help get their companies launched and their products done. We will provide up to $1.5 million to help you do your research and do what is needed to get a commercializable product out there on the market. The first phase is what we call a phase one, where you're identifying the problem you're attempting to solve. We will provide $150,000 to try to help you solve that potential problem. In turn, what you're going to propose to the Science Foundation is something that's highly innovative. It can't be something that's already out there being done. So if you have something innovative, and you've done your homework and can convince us that there's a potential market, we are a source of up to $1.5 million of funding over several cycles. That is essentially free money. We do expect you to do the work and do something out of it. It is taxpayer, so we are very conscious as to what the return is for the taxpayer. We do want you to be a sustainable business. We don't want to be able to find ourselves in a situation where we've put $1.5 million in and you still don't have a product. We're expecting you to finish it. And if you do need more than $1.5 million, where are you going to get the money from? You have to convince us ahead of time. So if you have a viable, innovative solution, you believe you've got customers out there and can demonstrate that, we're a source of funding. We have 2 deadlines every year. It's a solicitation that comes out. The URL for that is www.nsf.gov/ENG, which represents the engineering directorate that we're in, /IIP, which is the division, Industrial Innovation and Partnerships, /SBIR, which is the program opportunity for small businesses and innovative research. And I'm the program director for Education Applications and Technologies, so I would get your proposal if you submit it to NSF. Also think in terms that are broader than just science. I fund across almost every area of education, and I can fund from cradle to grave. Infant education, there's some experiments going on there, on up to even medical schools. I provide funding for new innovations to teach doctors how to handle patients and so on. So we handle a wide variety of topics, areas, and we're a potential source of funding. We hold no requirements for equity. You're free to keep all of the research, the intellectual property for yourself. All we ask is that you create a dynamite business, make a lot of money, so we can charge you a lot of tax. So that's our only requirement. The solicitation for the program comes out 2 times a year. The deadline dates are mid-June and early December. 3 months prior to that deadline, the solicitation comes out showing the topic areas we're considering funding. I will say that the education area is quite broad, and there's a catch-all. If you have an innovative idea that we haven't listed, you'll see a topic area called education tools. That's where it goes. So we're very open to accept anything in the realm of education. Our funding rate is about double that of the U.S. Department of Education. We have a funding rate of 15 to 20% that we're able to fund of the proposals that come in. And if successful, you can get $150,000 to help you with your initial research, and you're then eligible to apply for a phase 2, which can provide up to $750,000 to do additional research that will lead you to a prototype and commercialization. And with that, I will turn the meeting back to our host.
Great, thank you. So with that, we'd love to take your questions. We have a great opportunity to hear from National Science Foundation, as well as folks who are in the industry. We're doing well on time. So please, if you have questions, raise your hand. In the back.
Yes, www.nsf.gov/ENG/IIP/SBIR. Or another way to find it if you have trouble is do a Google search on NSF space SBIR and it'll pop up.
Great. Are there other questions out there? Yes. So the question is, what if you're a graduate student and you don't yet have your own business?
It's easy to start a business. There are eligibility requirements in that the company has to be owned 51% by U.S. individuals. You would have to have somebody designated as the principal investigator who has to be employed by the company 51% of the time. So it depends how many hours you put in as a graduate student. You couldn't be there for more than 20 hours a week. Now, you could own the company as a graduate student, hire somebody else to be the principal investigator. The only thing you need to worry about if you're a student is who's going to own the intellectual property. Many universities claim the intellectual property that their students are working on, so you got to be very clear about that and what you're working on.
Another question? Yes.
How many attempts and what kind of proof can we show that we talk to customers?
So the question is, what type of evidence do you provide to show that you talk to your customers or potential customers?
Well, in your proposal, you're going to provide the case that there's a market. How you do that is up to you. The general guidance we provide is talk to 100 people. That's not always easy to do, but that shows that you've got a large enough sample to try to make an initial case. So if you've documented that you've spoke to 100 people, you've gone to these conventions, and you've gotten this kind of feedback, that certainly helps. But there's no specific requirements except that at some point you need to convince a panel of experts who are reviewing your proposal that your product is commercially viable and somebody's out there willing to buy it. What we would not accept is you're building the product and then you'll find out who's going to use it. Now, you need to do that ahead of time.
And from our entrepreneurs, you have gone through private investment rounds. How do you demonstrate to those types of investors your market research on your product?
I think the main thing, like I said, is to is to show customer traction. First of all, how many people have signed up to use your product? How are they using it? What kind of feedback are they giving you? And how we are taking that feedback and doing continuous improvement on the product. So we had to show specific numbers of customers using it, which geographic areas, how many school districts, where are they from. So we had to show all of those numbers in order to convince them that, yes, we found a product market fit, people do want to use our product. And sometimes in a seed round, you may get away with just showing that you found the product market fit. You don't necessarily have to show revenue during a seed round, but before you go into a Series A round, there are specific revenue goals that you need to meet as well, because you want to show sustainability, because you're not going to sustain yourself purely on raising money from third parties.
Also, I think it's worth looking into good CRM software, customer relation management software, something like a Salesforce.com. That's what we use. Cloud-based, you pay a monthly fee if you can afford it. I mean, it's not that expensive. I think it's less than $100, less than $50 a month, I think. And but it allows you to document everything you do, every phone call you make, every conversation you have. All of your customers and prospects are organized. You can generate a report on the fly that you could probably attach to the application that would provide ample amounts of data to show that you're having a market discussion.
Yeah, and
Salesforce.com is the one that we use, but CRM, customer relation management software. There are lots of different.
Yeah, and one thing is, when you start out, you don't have any money to put in, and you want to actually do this using some of the free tools. We started out first with just a very simple SurveyMonkey survey. To be honest, if you need to ask more than 10 questions in SurveyMonkey, you have to buy a subscription. So we made sure that we were asking less than 10 questions, right? That's really how we started, is first with a survey, and of course you need to talk to the customers as well. The CRM software came later when we actually had a lot of customers and we had to maintain all the conversations and things like that. So.
Yes.
Just back up a step. Did you find a specific method that's more useful than others for getting in touch with people, like recalling and emailing or conferencing, or like how are you talking to these other customers?
The question is advice for making contact with customers. What are some of the preferred methods?
Do you want to?
With educators, I guess.
It's one of the most frustrating things to do, I think. There are different ways. I mean, we have an inside sales force, we have a field sales force. Inside sales force is making phone calls every day, emailing every day. They have to take rejection well, because who likes to be cold called? But they're also following up on leads that they might get from a show like this. Field sales people are really the relationship building folks. They're the ones that are going to have coffee with the superintendent or the curriculum coordinator or the principal, talking about their grandkids, that kind of thing. Building the relationship. Usually they're focused on a larger sized adoption, whereas the inside salesperson is more of a transactional sales type person. That's a great question. I don't have a good answer. It's just it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. So I think I'll just step backwards. A few steps. When we started, first it was just me and my co-founder, right? Our goal was to find the product market fit. So how do you find the product market fit when you don't have money and you don't have anyone on the team, right? So that's a different challenge to find people who have this pain point and to use your product. So really our first step we took was we looked at some of the local regional events where we were focusing on teachers and industry. So the local Chamber of Commerce was bringing together this group of industry leaders with the local school districts and having this conversation about how can industry really contribute to the classroom. That was a great forum because we had great discussions throughout the day. At the end of the day, I approached a bunch of the teachers and educators who were in the room and said, if we were to build a platform like this, would you use it? And they were so excited, and they said, before, just from that room, I was actually able to get 5 schools who were willing to pilot the project before we even wrote a single line of code. So it's really the message is networking. So and many times if you come from a technology background or you were never in business development or marketing, you're not really comfortable going out and putting yourselves out there and finding all these opportunities and network and stuff. But networking is so critical, especially as a startup founder. You really have to do the research, put yourself out there, find these opportunities, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to go to big conferences early on. Just find some of the local regional events where your target audience are gathering, and then see who, test out your pain point. Find the first teacher who'll use it. I still keep in touch with the very first teacher who used our platform, and she still is a big champion for us. So,
Yes, there was a question back here.
Have you all found any databases that you use that would help, let's say in the state of Florida, for reaching out to districts or teachers, etc.?
So questions, are there any databases with contact information for district officials and folks who might be good contacts?
There are several companies, not several, but a handful of companies out there that do nothing but keep fresh databases on contacts at schools, all kinds of demographic information about schools and districts, the funding sources. I think, I'm trying to think of what their names are. But you pay for those lists, and but they're usually pretty accurate. With the World Wide Web, you could also probably get that information on your own. Just have to dig a little harder, but it's free. Depends on how much time you have, really. But they do exist. I just can't think of the names off the top of my head.
Yeah, and usually state departments of education will maintain lists of all the districts and their websites, so you can go, and then you'll have to go to each website to get some contact information, but you can do that. And this will be the last question right up here.
Does your business have to be something that's built within the framework of a technology product where you would have to write a line of code? Or can you receive funding as a person who is maybe a human resource or someone who can bridge the gap between the educational technology world and in the actual education world itself?
So is this for the NSF grant?
Yes.
So for
Does it have to be something that involves the writing of code or a technology product, so to say, or can you get funding?
Does the NSF grant have to be for technology products or for more human resources and consulting or something like that?
For the SBIR program that I'm in, we're looking at probably more on the technology end than the human resource end. Part of that is scaling your efforts up. If something is solely based on human resources, there's only so much you can do, especially if you're the prime person doing that. You can't very well scale it up, and I would have a hard time justifying how we're going to get that $1.5 million back in tax revenue anytime. It would take decades to make that up. So in fairness to the taxpayer, we're looking for something that you can latch and get intellectual property on, get some protections, and where you would be the sole provider of something. And that ties in with innovation. If somebody can easily look at what you're doing and mimic it, your business model, and set up competition, the level of innovation is rather low. So we're providing funds for a high degree of innovation that is not easily replicated by somebody else.
Great. And with that, we'll wrap it up. I know that National Science Foundation and Software and Information Industry Association, we are jointly downstairs in the Incubator Pavilion along with NEPRIS. Adam is here as well. He doesn't have a booth, but he's here to talk with you as well. And I also encourage all of you to check out SIIA, as we do have a program to help startup companies. It's called our Join and Grow program, where as you're getting started, we pair you with mentors who are in the industry, who have been in your shoes and can help you along the way as you have some of these questions. And that's a great value for you. It also gives you the opportunity to network with some of these other companies and join into our competitions, where you can actually get a lot of view and have some credentials to go along with your products. So that's our website's SIIA.net and nsf.gov. Any final words?
I thought of those two. MDR and EdLights are two list providers. You pay for them, but they're comprehensive and accurate.
Have you used either one?
Yes. We used MDR. Used to be QED, but they got bought by MDR. I've looked at EdLights. They're pretty good, but I haven't tried them out yet.
Thank you all so much for coming, and we hope you enjoyed it.